The trial counsel will state the charge.
Charge 1, mutiny.
Did you relieve the commander of the USS Caine?
Yes.
Captain Queeg had lost control.
We had the commander under constant observation.
You felt you had the right to depose a commanding officer on the grounds of mental illness.
Yes.
Did you think he was insane?
Can you describe when and where the captain displayed this aversion to danger?
No.
Why do his hands tremble?
Objection.
The honor and career of an officer with an unblemished military record of 21 years standing is involved. Counsel and the witness are herewith cautioned that they are treading on dangerous and unprecedented grounds here.
When I heard that this was happening to begin with, before he had even died, I was like, okay, cool, but why couldn't you do like something like Killer Joe? You know, I really liked Killer Joe, William. Why are you doing a boring old staid-ass play, you know, that really only matters to old white men? You know, like, there's nothing credible about Herman Wouk's story to the modern day, or so I thought. Because that's really, like, what makes his version of this play work. He has updated it to the modern day, and he's made its message a lot more relevant. At least it feels a lot more relevant to me, because we existed in an era where the gerontocracy is vilified, you know, like they're the problem with the world, they're incompetent, they're enfeebled, and we can't trust them to do the job. But the message, and I guess the reality that youth don't want to admit, is that we aren't capable for the job. We're only interested in ourselves. We aren't, concerned with the higher ideals that drove great men like Captain Queeg to be in the Navy as long as he did. You know, like we take them for granted, and we don't take the mantle that we are fighting for granted, and that just diminishes our institutions. And that was a very timely message to be coming in this year, given everything that our nation is facing. And it even kind of reminded me of everything going on with Matt Gaetz and the House of Representatives, you know, and ousting the speaker for the first time ever, because he's kind of initiating the same thing. It's a mutiny. And what happens when authority has its knees kicked out from underneath it? And how do we find order from within that? So I found this movie to be welcome, even though going in, I just was like, why are we getting this?
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode 28. Folks, we've got a really special one for you today. In case you haven't noticed, October 6th was one of the most crowded dates of new releases this year.
Absurd.
And as such, we've got a mega watch list for you today. But not only that, it's spooky season, so we're introducing the first edition of our reoccurring October segment, the Halloween Scare Stream, in which we talk about all the horror fare that we've been watching in the month of Halloween. We've also got a little bit of news today, and then of course, our main event, the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial, the last film of William Friedkin. We're going to talk about the strawberry incident. We're going to talk about the cheese incident. We're going to talk about all the incidents. Plus, we've got a little bit of mentionables at the end, and of course, timestamps are going to be in the episode description. Please subscribe if you like what you see. Please give us a rating on the podcast service of your choice if you like what you hear. But that's the business end of the show. Chuck, take it away.
Yeah. This is a funny trend we've been seeing. There's a lot of very play-like films coming out this year. and they're not all from Wes Anderson. This final one from William Friedkin's kind of goofy in that way because it's a adaptation of a stage play, but there's something to learn even from retreaded, old, stepped on material like Herman Wouk's classic story and the play that sprang from it. Because if there's anything we've learned, it's that in the 21st century we need applications so that we can properly track, catalog, rank everything. And this is what we're going to be talking about in the news today. It's not a service I've ever actually used. It came out like in the flurry of website speculation that happened, and I was using so many random things, and this was one that fell by the wayside. But as I understand it, you are a Letterboxd user.
Yeah, a little bit. Not too much. I basically, there was like a time period, I don't know, maybe a year ago to like, there was like a 8-month period where I was writing reviews of like every movie that I saw pretty much.
Yeah.
And so I basically would like transpose them just to Letterboxd essentially. But I've never really liked the site itself. It's become worse as time has gone on because it's basically, I don't know, it's just become, from what I can see anyways, I mean, I don't really spend a whole lot of time browsing it, but it's, from what I understand, very, very like clicky and very, people have no problem with doing stuff like review bombing somebody if they, sort of go against the grain or, and there's like power users who are like the people who basically like control the entire site. Because, if there's one thing I saw, or I kind of was clued into looking into this news story, it's that these two guys who started this site, Matt Buchanan and Carl von Randau, is that they've essentially been on like autopilot for 10 years where this site was basically a part-time labor of love on their part. They started it in 2013, and they've just been basically like, have at it. And they let people just do whatever. They let people run rampant over this site. And so it's interesting that we've gotten to this point now where they can sell it to the tune of $50 million. So yeah,
is that
interesting
all
stuff.
is that really all that website could be worth? Like, it seems like they didn't get enough. Like, or or is that just like where the market's at?
You're definitely right. I mean, on one hand, you've got this thing that these guys have barely put any work into, and to be able to make 25 million off that's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, what Letterboxd has become like the destination for movie reviews on the internet. Probably second only to, I mean, actually not even second only. It probably is more popular than like the IMDb rating section. But yeah, maybe Rotten Tomatoes has a little bit of ground because they're more on the critic and audience side. But yeah, they definitely got lowballed here because I think essentially what's going to happen is they have over 13 million users, registered users, and what this company that bought them is totally going to do is just turn around and start selling user data off the back of this company. And so they're going to make way more than $50 million doing that, I'm guessing. Especially
since like the target audience is going to be, like movie studios and Hollywood themselves. And since they're adding television, it's even more critical, because what matters more to these companies like Netflix and all the rest is market testing. And that is what this like thing, is, or would appear to be. Like the cinephiles, the snobs, the people who care about getting their opinion out there and care about the opinions of others. Like that is the 13 million. Like, and they're the people who will really make sure that your movie's seen on an opening weekend or not, but will give it legs, post theatrical release, or even if it's a streaming only thing, you want to be able to get the word out. So yeah, this is going to get corrupted so fucking quick, especially when it probably already is corrupted. Because if I know anything about like websites like Reddit, where power users and Jannies, just like are bought and paid for by literally anybody who will make it happen for them. Like when you find out like how much little it takes to pay a Reddit mod so that you can do whatever the fuck you want on their subreddit, like it doesn't take anything. They'll do it for peanuts. They don't care. But in this instance, it's just going to be a lot of, okay, yeah, like I'm the guy with the most cred on this site, so pay me. Like I'm the Roger Ebert of Letterboxd. If you want a thumbs up from me, you're gonna have to like. It's even gonna be worse than when Harry Knowles was in charge and running the movie reviews online. Like, because now it's going to be algorithmically leveraged in a way that it maybe hasn't been quite as much outside of Rotten Tomatoes and aggregators. Because that's what makes this place unique. It's the personalities. It's the quote unquote like organic trending, like memery, I suppose. So yeah, I might have to dip my toes in and see if there's something more that maybe this show could get out of it. But that's just more work. And do we have the time and energy for that? I don't know.
Yeah, and then to give a little bit more context to this, so they did decide to sell a controlling interest in the company, so they no longer are controlling it, and they sold it to this Canadian investment firm called Tiny. And I don't know if you took a look at their website at all, but
it's
when
creepy.
I look at this, yeah, this site immediately gives me like sketchy vibes, like those real estate companies that are basically like, we'll buy your house for cash in as little as 7 days, that you see like all over billboards all over whatever town you live in. And it's, I don't know, that is sort of their MO. I was looking through sort of their like their strategies and their sort of mission statement, and they're like, we will make a deal with you in 30 days or less, and for all cash. And so it's like, of course they're gonna lowball you, of course they're gonna try and get it as fast of a turnaround as possible, because they're preying on these companies that need to sell quick, and
they're vulture capitalists, I believe is the term.
Yeah.
And
so
and their website, they have a podcast. Like they are like they are weirdly like it's almost like MLM level energy as far as like advocating the business model. They're not just selling themselves. They're like, this is how you make money, people. Learn from us.
And their first sort of order of business. Now here's the interesting part. This is where like the users come in, because their first order of business is, we are adding TV shows to Letterboxd. And this is proving to be very controversial because if people don't know, Letterboxd is strictly movies, and it doesn't do miniseries, it doesn't do TV series, it doesn't do anything like that. And so people are sort of going gaga over like the purity of film, and television is a lower art film, or a lower art form, I should say. And this is just going to complicate things too much, because they want to have ratings for TV shows, individual seasons, and individual episodes.
Gross. Yeah. That really atomizes the whole experience in a way that I think is a little gross. I agree with them. I understand the business decision. That you need to talk about TV. There's so much money being invested in it. But does it really improve the experience and the brand to have a specific review of like season 6, episode 5 of Below Deck?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, the only real use case I could find or think of for that is like, if somebody wants to be able to remember like what the standout episodes of like their favorite TV shows were. But yeah, I mean, other than that, not really, because I brought up IMDb earlier, and if people don't know, IMDb does that, where they give ratings for seasons, shows overall, and individual episodes. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it just really complicates things. It doesn't really, you don't really know where where to stand on a show, because it's like, you could go in and look at a TV show and see that it has like a 8.5 rating, but then you'll go to like individual episodes and it'll be like 3.2, 4.4, and just like really, I don't know, it's pretty overly complicates things. But what do you think about this this like argument that TV is like a lower art form.
It's a little silly. Like, I think those people are, I don't know, like you're kidding yourself if you think you're getting a proper cinema experience in the video on demand world. You know, and there's and when you go from the quality of the stories and even like the creativity and like the talent, like there is nothing, like there's like very few people out there that are giving cinephiles what they want in cinema. There is more of it happening in TV. Like there is more series that I've seen in the last 10 years than, you know, that I like am like, you know, absolutely floored by, than movies. Like, I'll kind of admit that. Like, year by year, like, yeah, movies have power in the moment, but as far as time, like, there are seasons of TV and episodes of TV that I would hold up over like the best films of all time. If they're, you know, given their fair shake, I think they deserve it. And these people aren't giving the preeminent art form of the day a fair shake, which is, you know, very retrograde of them, and they should stop being Luddites. You know, watch what's going on Apple TV Plus. That's where this the true Kino is. I hold that. Like they're the ones who get it, who realize this is the sea change, and you can either be like Netflix and slum it, you know, and go for like the airport paperback version of, you know, of this new kind of product. Because yeah, only Christopher Nolan and Greta Gerwig are making true cinema in theaters these days, and eventually they will be on streaming too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that view of television is a very like 1990s and earlier view where, you know, TV was kind of a shit show as far, you know, it was nothing but sitcoms and like soap operas and really, you know, awful dramas for the most part. And
Picket Fences was like peak. And then, like, I don't know, like the Fargonauts have been watching all of Twin Peaks, and that's really where everything changes.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and now we have like something on the level of Twin Peaks at least once or twice a year, it seems like.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to kind of put a cap on this, the one thing I will give these guys credit for, these two owners, that they were smart enough to do is they did not sell from within the entertainment industry, because that was one of their sort of goals, I guess, in selling to this tiny investment firm was, unlike Rotten Tomatoes, which sold in part to Warner Brothers, and IMDb, which sold to Amazon, because IMDb is owned by Amazon now, who of course is in the entertainment business now. So yeah, I do give them credit for not selling to like, I don't know, Paramount or Netflix, or because they claimed that they got offers from companies like those.
And that would have really, you know, ruined everything, even more than adding television to the conversation would have. Moving on to the watch list. It's a little briefer, I guess, compared to what's, you know, coming on the back end. But this caused a sensation at Sundance earlier this year. Fair Play is on Netflix. I didn't get to finish it, but I found its opening act and opening thrust, as it were, to be very effective. But what do you make of the whole experience?
Yeah, this movie, I find it makes a lot of good points about the sort of power dynamics between men and women in the workplace. But I found after a while it starts hitting on the same point over and over and over. I mean, essentially what happens in this film, if you know if you haven't seen it, is a boyfriend, girlfriend, or I guess fiance at the beginning of the movie. They work at the same venture capitalist company, and they're basically boyfriend and girlfriend in secret because it's against the company policy to date coworkers. And the female in the relationship gets a promotion to a position that is above her boyfriend, and it essentially makes him incredibly uncomfortable. It makes him sort of resent her. He thinks he should have gotten the promotion, and that's sort of what this movie is for most of its running time. And I find that It's, I don't know, it's just hitting you have the material for a short film here, but you make a 110-minute movie out of it. And I think for most of the movie, it's sort of, I don't know, it's kind of boring because she is completely infallible. She is the perfect girlfriend. Like, literally in this movie, she has like no negative character traits, and her boyfriend is a complete dickbag, and it's just not very interesting in that way for most of the running time. And this has sort of been billed as a thriller suspense movie, but it really isn't, because it's very one track. It's, I don't know, it's not very tense, because you sort of you kind of get on you know where the movie is going. You get on sort of the track of the movie, 20 minutes in, you know where this is going. And I don't know, it's just very one note, I thought, for the majority of it. And I'll talk about the sort of final 15 minutes in a second, but yeah, what did you think of what you saw?
Yeah, it is a little, straightforward in that way, but like the hook that kept me in was an ambiguity that maybe I created in my own mind, which was, well, how genuine is this lady about anything? Has she been real ever? How much of everything that she does is just the perfect thing for the situation? It's like how calculated is this character going to prove to be? And does the movie actually go there? Is that what the big reveal at the end is? Is that I was using you the whole time, you insipid little simp? Like, I was now kiss my feet. Is that where it's going? Or did it like go in a completely different direction?
Well, I think, you could look at it that way, but here's how I looked at it, was basically this movie spends its entire running time, minus like the final 15 minutes, trying to convince the audience what a, perfect woman this girl is, and what a complete,
she's so smart,
and what a complete shitbag her boyfriend is. And it's all sort of done to service the final 15 minutes of the film, so that when this heel turn happens, the audience says, "Yes, Queen." She, like kind of like in
a promising young woman kind of way.
Exactly, yeah. And it's sort of done in like a way where it's like, she put up with all of this for so long, so she totally deserves to do what she does in the final 15 minutes. In my opinion, when I look at what happens, I'm not going to outright spoil it, but when I look at what happens, what I instead see is, these people were both shitty people, but she was just better, she was just better at hiding it, basically. He is the more overtly shitty person, in that he's the one, he has like sort of the masculine energy where he's like, when I get angry, I'm gonna throw things, and I'm going to punch my refrigerator, and she is more so like the cold, calculated, like, this was, this could have been my plan the entire time, but whether or not it was, I'm gonna make it look like it was, and I'm going to create this, I'm gonna get everybody on my side, and then I'm gonna destroy your life, basically. And I don't know, it didn't work for me at the end, because I was sort of on board with what this movie was doing, especially in the opening 20 minutes or so. But then it becomes very one-sided. It becomes this would have been a more effective thriller if these two people were sort of using each other, or were preying on each other.
Yeah.
But because it's so one-sided, it's really not a thriller, because what the what's going to happen. And the other thing that I will say is that the movie wants you to believe that it is sort of operating within the rules of our world, but then there are these moments in the film where it's like, it's really straining the credulity, where you have this scene where a guy is smashing a golf club over his desk, or you have this scene where the boss of the company, played by Eddie Marsan, is calling Emily a dumb fucking bitch to her face. And
Loved
I was
that.
just, yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Marsan was the best part about this movie, but
He was, yeah.
And if I would have punched this movie up, I would have tried to make it more funny. You got to play up the menace a bit more, and and like you're kind of saying, it would have been better if it actually felt like there was, different like dueling priorities between these people, and that like it was more clear that they're just kind of using each other or manipulating each other. And yeah, there needed to be more more pinching going on here, and less just lazy, like I don't even know what wave of feminism we're on right now, but it like that's why like I had hopes that it was going to be more Crichton-esque, that it was going to go more in a disclosure sort of a direction. So I don't know, Luca, are you going to let me finish watching this movie tonight? Maybe not, because one that I had to take 2 chances to get at the bite at the apple to finish, because unlike Fair Play, which has no ambiguity, Reptile is just nothing but that. There's just nothing but suggestion, and like they tantalize you with red herrings like everywhere you look. And the end result is a movie that I felt very unsettled by, but it's so simple. Like, it's just a basic ass police procedural, but then it slowly unfurls itself into something that I found, interesting, but at the end I'm still just like, what happened? like it's like one of those, as far as I can understand it, I liked it. Unlike like The Usual Suspects and Roger Ebert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely more my speed. Yeah, it's a thriller that is actually a thriller. It actually touches on some of the same themes that Fair Play is trying to touch on, with sort of Del Toro thinking that his wife is cheating, but then she isn't, and there's a lot of sort of half-hearted comparisons that people have been making to like Fincher in regards to this movie, which I think are a little, I don't know, just a little too simplistic. I think this has more in common with that movie from a couple of years ago, The Little Things. Do you remember that movie?
That name it rings a bell.
It was like a police procedural, like dark thriller with Denzel Washington and Jared Leto. Jared Leto was the killer.
Yeah, that was a weird movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
but of course, this is much better. I found it is a slow burn, definitely. Like the first hour or so of the film, it's definitely a slow burn. If that's not your speed, you're probably not gonna like this. But I found especially like the last half hour of this movie is like agonizingly tense, where you're like, oh my god, Benicio del Toro is gonna get like shot in the head at any moment. Like some one of his cop buddies is just gonna like come around the corner and just blow his head off, and that never really happens, but you feel like it's gonna happen at any second. And I really enjoyed this for the most part. I mean it's a perfectly fine like 7 out of 10 thriller. Like this doesn't have to be, I just don't understand people who everything has to be a 1 or a 10 out of 10. This I found this to be time well spent, especially for a lot of the garbage movies similar to this movie that get uploaded to Netflix.
Yeah, this would have been like an instant rental, or like a remote drop if it was on TNT in another era, in another reality. Because it scratches the itch. It does look, it does have that moody sort of like Fincher color palette to it, but it's a very different movie than the one David Fincher would have made. I think that's safe to say, because this movie is basically just like a bear trap, and it's like you're a cop looking at, oh, there's a bear trap there. I wonder what would happen if I put my foot in it. Oh, okay. How do I get out of this bear trap that I'm now stuck in? And at the end, when it seems like his head's gonna get snapped off at any moment, that's when everything crystallizes, and all of that time sitting in the slow cooker was well worth it. because it actually goes somewhere worthwhile, you know, which is really all a movie needs to do to not fall below that, like, that, you know, 500% mark as far as, you know, like, its quality level. So yeah, I'd take more of this. Like, this movie, it has a big cast in it, but it couldn't have cost more than like $30 million, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, probably less than that.
Yeah.
Because it was Del Toro actually was a co-writer on this. It's his like first, I think it's his first writing credit, and so I'm sure that he sort of championed it along the way and got all of his, you know, actor buddies to sign on board. Like, you know,
JT.
Eric Bogosian. Yeah, Justin Timberlake. Yeah, that's a weird one. Yeah, Eric Bogosian's in there. Herc
Michael
from
Pitt.
Yeah, Michael Pitt. Yeah, oh my God. After his, like, he disappeared off the face of the earth because he was kind of, for a while there, he was one of those sort of controversial or sort of shunned actors because it came out he was so hard to work with. But yeah, he was great in this as the sort of the red herring guy. But I want to know specifically, I think the most interesting part of this movie, as you alluded to, comes at the ending, because this movie has one of the fastest turnarounds between the climax and then like literally 2 minutes later the movie's done. It's just like boom, the, you know, bad guy gets shot in the head, and then we get one scene of, you know, Justin Timberlake being arrested, and then one final scene, and then it's done. And what do you make of the final scene of what is happening there, of Del Toro and his wife, played by Alicia Silverstone, who is also great, dipping his hand in like wax, and then it ends? And so what was going on there, in your opinion?
I don't know. Like, it's like they're like either like it's a symbolic way of like saying that there's blood on his hands, or they're like trying to like preserve his hands in some way. I don't know. It's I forget, was that waxing telegraph, did that appear in the movie before the ending?
I don't think so.
That
no.
whole act of molding. Yeah, it was a strange thing to do, unless like they're gonna like cut his hands off so that they can never prove that he was, you know, actually guilty of something. Like, unless it's a subtle way of being like, actually he was in on it all along and he's the secret bad guy. Like, and I don't think that that's what they're trying to say, but no. Yeah, it was kind of lost on me.
Yeah, there's definitely some symbolism there with, you know, like, well, the title of the movie is Reptile, and sort of like shedding, you know, shedding skin. But I heard an interesting theory that, and maybe this should have been better telegraphed so that people would have actually known that this is a thing, but that people can use wax to like get rid of like gunpowder residue off their hands.
Yeah.
And because, of course, you know, when he fires the gun, and, you know, there's probably, you know, gunpowder residue all over his hands that the cops would then use to implicate him. And so, yeah, I heard somebody say that. I won't take credit for knowing that fact, because I definitely didn't. But I heard someone say that they can do that.
That person, I think, is right on. I think they nailed it with that, because that's the only thing that makes sense. Like, they had to be something ulterior to it besides just arts and crafts. Who's the filmmaker behind this?
This is actually a guy, this is his feature debut. His name's Grant Singer, and he's previously really only done music videos. He's done a lot of music videos for The Weeknd, and
okay, cool.
So yeah, first time feature.
Good luck to you, dude. You know,
yeah,
I'm glad he didn't get sucked into making The Idol. Which I just like, we kind of like the way that we never talked about how that thing ended, but HBO also did oh, by the way, you don't get a finale episode. Just fucking figure it out, which is what everyone deserves there. You'd wish that they would do that at Disney Plus with their Star Wars shows, from what I hear. Because what the hell's going on with Ahsoka?
Oh yeah, so I just wanted to touch on this a little bit. The finale of Ahsoka was this week, and this show, like a lot of these Star Wars Disney Plus shows, wants to tease you with the possibility that it's gonna get good, or that, there are gonna be these inspired moments of Star Wars storytelling. But, again, like a lot of these shows, it really doesn't amount to much. It's just mostly, I talked about the show already after I think the second or third episode, and it's mostly the same. I just really wasn't invested in it all the way through because I had never watched Rebels, I had never watched Clone Wars, and I guess in part, Star Wars, this area of Star Wars is not my Star Wars. This is the people who grew up in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. This is sort of their Star Wars. But I don't know, I still think that it's not very interesting, even looking at it from that perspective. Ahsoka is kind of a boring character, and it just didn't really amount to much other than being a prequel for whatever movie Dave Filoni's gonna do, now. He's gonna be able to do his big like Thrawn arc, a bad guy arc now, and the one thing I will say, though, is, we did finally get the live-action Thrawn, and that, if you're going to watch any episode of this show, if you're going to watch any YouTube clips of the show, do watch the introduction of Thrawn, because it was genuinely really cool. He shows up, and, what they did with his sort of... because if people don't know, Thrawn basically got, like, lost in space, and he was trapped in like a faraway galaxy, and all he had with him was his one Star Destroyer and basically his like platoon of stormtroopers. And when they finally do discover Thrawn, he finally comes into the show, they're all just like busted up because they've been like scavenging on this planet, and all of his stormtroopers have kind of like augmented their uniforms, their stormtrooper uniforms in different ways, because they're all just like it reminds me, they're trying, basically what Filoni's trying to do here is he's trying to do like Lieutenant Kurt's Apocalypse Now, but in the Star Wars universe, where like Thrawn has gone AWOL, and all of his platoon of stormtroopers are like loyal to him to a fault, and he's basically brainwashed them, and that's essentially what it is. And it's really cool. It's actually really, really cool the way they do it that way. And so that would be my suggestion for if you want to watch anything for this show, watch that episode where Thrawn is introduced. And otherwise pretty forgettable. I'm not sure what they're going to do now that Ray Stevenson died, because he's definitely not dead at the end of this season. I was going to ask
about that. And so that's unfortunate. Yeah, they're just going to recast. Probably.
I think so, because his character is going to be too important to whatever they're going to do next, because his character is the other interesting part about this show, in that he is basically one of the like gray Jedi, where he doesn't want to be part of the Jedi Order. He doesn't want to be a part of the Sith. He essentially wants to tear it all down, and he's gonna like do whatever he has to do to make sure that, because he sees everything as like a cycle, like the Sith versus the Jedi, it's a repeating cycle, and he's gonna essentially break the cycle. And so I think they will probably recast him.
So are they sowing the seeds for like a Yuzhan Vong invasion? Are you familiar with that from the original expanded universe?
Not too much, no. Is that like when Thrawn, is that sort of his arc?
It's the follow-up to Thrawn, because they beat Thrawn, but in the original continuity in canon, the reason for Palpatine's ascendance to the Emperor was because his force powers clued him into the fact that this extra galactic society was going to be coming to invade their galaxy, and they needed to be ready for it. So Palpatine did nothing wrong. The Emperor did nothing wrong, Matt. He was just trying to get the galaxy ready for an invasion, and it's an invasion of like these aliens with living ships who are force immune. The force doesn't affect them, so like they're like a credible threat, in that way. And
sure.
And I'm not sure exactly on what happens and the ins and outs of it. But I heard a rumor that there was some kind of an allusion to, oh no, there's like a greater threat coming from outside the galaxy. We need to be ready for it. And is that actually true? Or is that just someone talking out of school on the internet?
No, I could definitely see that, because what this galaxy where Thrawn was trapped, it's never, for as small as Star Wars is, we have to remember everything in Star Wars takes place in the same galaxy, and this is the first time they've ever gone outside of that.
Yeah.
And so most certainly there could be like some sort of universal threat, or threat from like another galaxy, threat from like another universe. And I think it's probably pretty up in the air. They do leave a lot of, like I said before, this show is disappointing in the fact that there's way too many loose ends. It feels way too much like an ad for whatever comes next, whether that be the second season of the show or Dave Filoni's sort of rumored movie. And I think they could pretty much go almost anywhere with it.
And that's kind of the whole problem with the Disney-fied Marvel method, trademarked, as it were. But, we'll just have to see. Maybe in 40 years, it all will make sense and be worth watching when everything is out. Because otherwise, we have too much to watch. It's Halloween. It's time to get spooked. It's the Scare Stream. It's the first time that we have decided to just dump it all in one big bucket and just kind of talk about it. Because over the weekend, Angie and I watched a ton of horror. Well, November was with her dad for the weekend, and among them was the original Ring movie, for the Western remake, directed by Gore Verbinski. I saw this movie in theaters, when I was 12 years old at the time, and I just remember being floored by it and terrified by it. My friend Johnny's older brother, we were walking home, and he was like, "You guys want to go home and watch videotapes?" It was like trying to spook us even further. And I watched this with Angie, and it's comical how poorly written this movie is, but it's I guess a testament to how effective a movie can be in spite of how stupid its premise is. And but I don't know, this movie was kind of a phenomenon at the time, and it was a franchise starter. But this is the only one I've ever seen as far as the Japanese or American versions of this story.
Yeah. It is really the only one worth watching. The other Ring, the American ones especially, are pretty bad in my opinion. And I remember. at this point, it's been endlessly parodied, and it was a phenomenon. I don't know if you remember this, but I don't know if you can remember when you saw it in the theater, but the projectionists, when this movie originally came out in the theaters across the US, they were instructed that when the movie ended and the lights came up, they were supposed to yell from the projection booth, 7 days, to the audience. Do you remember that?
No, that did not happen at the Playhouse Theater in Mott. That would have been great.
Yeah, they were literally I don't know if the production company, this movie studio, sent out memos to all of the theaters, and they said, hey, this could be fun. All the projectionists, just yell that from the projection booth when the movie ends, because it'll kind of, I don't know, scare people even more. And I remember that was like a thing that people always talked about when they talked about this movie.
That's a fun gimmick. They should do more of that. That's something Hitchcock would have done.
Yeah.
Okay, coming up next on the Scare Stream, you were able to watch the latest VHS film.
Yeah, VHS 85. And so, if people don't know, the reason why it's called that is because for a couple entries now, the VHS series has sort of picked a time period to be set in. And in this instance, it's 1985. So there's a lot of Jane Fonda workout videos, and there's a lot of, first generation VR, and a lot of American Excess, and a lot of footage of malls and stuff. And so in this, with this VHS entry, I mean, they're yearly at this point. I think Shudder plans to do them on a yearly basis. And I'm kind of surprised that they've been able to turn this series around as much as they have, because this definitely is a hit or miss movie, like the last one, like 94, but it's not as bad, not nearly as bad as VHS Viral, which was the low point in this series by far. And they've gotten, the other thing this series has done is they've gotten really like big directors to like come back to the series, because for a while there they were playing with like some really, bottom of the bucket directors as far as the people who worked on this. But in this film's case, they've got Scott Derrickson, who did, of course, the Sinister movies and Doctor Strange, and we've got David Bruckner, who did the Hellraiser remake. And so yeah, there's some pretty top tier talents working on this, and I enjoyed these for the most part. I think the best one is the one done by a director named Mike P. Nelson, and it's about a group of college kids that go to like a lake for the weekend, and they get murdered while they're all there, like on the water, on their boat, and then they all come back to life, and because they figure out that the lake has like resurrection powers. So
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's funny because their one friend who didn't go swimming is the one who actually dies and stays dead. But then they all come back to life except for him, because they swam in the lake. And then this is actually a two-parter. So you actually get one half of this at the beginning of the film and then one half at the end. And the second half of the short is them like going and getting their revenge on the murderer. And so I really, really enjoyed that one. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, for the most part, I really enjoyed these. I mean, there's a couple stinkers in there. There's the one thing I really don't like about certain shorts in this series of movies is when for like, if you take a 15-minute short film and it's fairly typical for like the first like 13 minutes, like you feel almost as if you're not even watching a horror movie, you're just watching a bunch of footage from 1985, a bunch of found footage, and then in the last like 2 minutes it's like, oh, this is actually a horror film and all shit breaks loose and oh my god, people are dying and there's blood and there's guts, and then it's done in like a couple minutes. And that's one of the things I don't like. I think they should be better about like, slow rolling their premise and hooking you from the very beginning, instead of like this, like, oh, we're watching footage of, people just kind of, talking and being kids or whatever. And then all shit's going to break loose. And yeah, they need to be better about, kind of selling their premise from the get go. And, but yeah, overall a good, we're in a good place with the VHS series. And I mean, I would recommend, this is on Shudder now, and go and get yourself a Shudder subscription, because this is the 1 month every year that it's definitely worth it. And Shudder, they really kind of kick their output into overdrive, where they're like, okay, we're gonna have a new movie every week or a couple every week. And so yeah, go and sub for the like $6 or whatever it is.
Probably very worth it. I remember the best short from the last one was the one where those guys just get sucked into hell. That like Exorcist, like that one was great. I loved that.
Yeah, that one was awesome. Mm-hmm.
Angie and I dipped our toes into old, fare as yet again. We watched the first two Saw movies. I had never seen any other Saw movie but the first one. I rented it like when I was 13. I rented it. I wasn't old enough to, but they let me take it anyway. And I remember getting a headache from watching it. And I was reminded of, because of like how guerrilla and like they had to make this movie. Like James Wan has said that like in the editing room they realized, oh shit, we don't have enough shots for like we can't finish the movie. So that's why this movie looks the way it does. It was not being innovative with its like editing or anything like that. They were trying to disguise the fact that they were using outtakes, and I was reminded of that as I was watching it this time around. The second Saw movie doesn't quite live up to the ingenuity of the first one, and I didn't really like its ironic twist. It was just like, and that's the thing about Jigsaw that I hate. All of his like lessons are just like so insipid and like on the nose, like, oh, you don't value your life and you do drugs, so I'm gonna make you jump into a pit of needles. Isn't that ironic? Or like, but at the same time, what makes these movies great and like why you should watch them is literally the final 5 minutes when Jigsaw reveals how much he's bamboozled everybody, and that music cue kicks in, and you know that he's victorious, and then he goes, game over, and then the movie just ends. Like, because then I think that's what I could live with. That's what could make me watch every Saw movie, all the way up to the one that's coming out later this month.
No, it's out now.
It's already out. There you go.
Yeah, it's out. Yeah.
Saw X.
Yeah, the Saw. I mean, people forget that the first Saw movie is like a police procedural, pretty much. It's like it's not a horror movie. It's like just like a gory police procedural, and it only took like a direction into like torture porn type horror with the second one, because they realized that that's what people came for. They want to see the traps. They want to see, how unique the different traps are and stuff like that. And God, yeah, I love the first Saw movie. I think as you said, the final like 5 minutes are so incredible. Like when he gets up off the ground,
it peels the squib off his head.
Yeah, and like when he slams the door, and you can still hear the guy like screaming when it cuts to black, or just like screaming in agony because he's stuck there. And it's the first Saw movie is awesome, and it gets kind of lumped in with the others,
like Hostel,
unfortunately,
and all the rest. And that's something that Juan has said in interviews in the past, that like it wasn't something he set out to do. He has complicated feelings about it, but in the end, it gave him his career. And like, and Lee Wannell has expressed the same, because that was a unique thing about this movie. Like the dude who directed it, the guy that wrote it, and co-starred in it, were all just nobodies who, with nothing more than a short film and a script, were able to basically bully Hollywood into letting them make a movie on their terms. And for that reason, like the Saw is it's on the Rushmore of 21st century horror, and it deserves more respect. But what does not deserve respect, I understand, is this new Pet Semetary movie.
Yeah, this is Pet Semetary Bloodlines, and I do not need to spend a lot of time on this one. This is a completely unnecessary origin story for John Lithgow's character from the 2019 remake, if people remember that, which was surprisingly decent in and of itself. But this movie is a mess, and it's put out by, you immediately get a red flag, because this movie is put out by the Paramount Pictures imprint label, which is called Paramount Players. And if you ever see in front of a movie you're watching the logo for Paramount Players show up, immediate red flag, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to do a Blumhouse, basically, where they make ultra low budget shitty movies that will give them a guaranteed return whether or not the movie fails or not. If it fails, they get a small return. If it does gangbusters and is a success, it gives them a big return. And so it's an immediate red flag. This was released straight to Paramount Plus, and it's a mess of a movie. It's generic, it's mediocre. David Duchovny is in this, and he is completely asleep at the wheel. One of the most like asleep at the wheel phoned in performances I have seen in recent memory. And do not watch.
Oh man, there he is. There's our guy. Yeah, I'll be frank, I haven't seen him try in a movie since Return to Me in like 2003. So he was in that weird a race rom-com that I saw a while back. He played Jonah Hill's dad, and let me tell you, that guy was on indica that whole shoot, and you could tell. I didn't see the 2019 one except for like maybe like 15 minutes when it randomly came on, and I have no use for shovelware, guys. You can do better than that, but you can't do better than William Friedkin's, maybe not his finest film, but his most well-known one, which is the original Exorcist. This movie has power. I don't care that my mom laughed at it when she saw it in the 70s and thought it was hokey and goofy. This movie was my nightmare fuel as a child. Like getting to watch this movie when I was a kid was like a big deal because it was built up. It had a like a mystique to it before I even saw it. But what's funny is that the part that is the most unsettling is that like radiographic sequence where like they're doing that operation on her and pricking her neck and like putting that agent into her carotid artery. Do you remember that part? That part fucks me up so much.
When they're basically like experimenting on her to try and figure out what exactly is wrong with her. They're just doing all these tests. Yeah.
But I have to say, Exorcist II, The Heretic from John Borman, what the hell were they thinking? Why do people think that that's a good movie?
Oh, they do? Oh, yeah, God, I didn't know that.
There's like a weird movement to be like, hey, actually, like, this movie is the good sequel. Like, this is an underrated, sequel to a horror classic. And I just don't see it. I did not enjoy that movie at all. It was a disappointment. Because, like, I had accidentally put on The Heretic 3, thinking that I was watching The Heretic 2. And that one sucks as well. Is there any good Exorcist sequel? I don't know. We haven't seen Believer, but I doubt it.
Yeah, no. From what I hear, no, there is not. There's a lot of There's a lot of rewriting of history going on in the world of like horror sequels because, for the longest time, nobody liked Exorcist II, and there's similar things going on with like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, where people are now suddenly like, this is actually the best one. And it's like, come on, man. Like, you're just trying to, you're just trying to be contrarian, or you're just trying to be like enough time has passed now that, I don't know what's going on, but there's just a lot of like rewriting of history that people are trying to do.
Like, I respect to a degree the kind of like world building and continuity it tries to have with the first one. Like actually having Max von Sydow play himself at his appropriate age. That's a radical choice. But when you get down to it, it's like, oh, we're flashing lights and people are sharing minds. And it just gets so up John Borman's like new agey ass that it loses all touch with what, like the Catholic exploitation that is at the core of the story. And it went off in a direction that just did not serve the franchise or any of the people in it. It's so weird that Ellen Bernstein wasn't in this first sequel that was made, but she's in the one that comes out in 2023.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I've heard some pretty awful things about her presence in that movie, is what I'll say, in that she is utterly wasted. And so it's very interesting now where we're at with we're in a very small time frame now where there are things going on that are completely spitting on the grave of William Friedkin, and there is other things going on that are sort of celebrating his legacy, and both are happening at the exact same time.
And in fact, his legacy is actively being added to, even, beyond the grave, which is, really the why this is so spooky. He's speaking to us from beyond the veil with the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial, his final film, available on Showtime through the Paramount Plus app, if you're one of those people. And this is a story that I'm pretty familiar with. I saw the 1950s adaptation with Humphrey Bogart, back in the day. So and I flipped through the stage play one time because of the famous monologue that comes at the end from Greenwald. And this is, when I heard that this was happening to begin with, before he had even died, I was like, okay, cool, but why couldn't you do like something like Killer Joe? I really liked Killer Joe, William. Why are you doing a boring old staid ass play, that really only matters to old white men? There's nothing credible about Herman Wouk's story to the modern day, or so I thought, because that's really like what makes his version of this play work. He has updated it to the modern day, and he's made its message a lot more relevant. At least it feels a lot more relevant to me, because we existed in an era where the gerontocracy is vilified. They're the problem with the world. They're incompetent, they're enfeebled, and we can't trust them to do the job. But the message, and I guess the reality that youth don't want to admit, is that we aren't capable for the job. We're only interested in ourselves. We aren't, concerned with the higher ideals that drove great men like Captain Queeg to be in the Navy as long as he did. We take them for granted, and we don't take the mantle that we are fighting for granted. And that just diminishes our institutions. And that was a very timely message to be coming in this year, given everything that our nation is facing. And it even kind of reminded me of everything going on with Matt Gaetz and the House of Representatives, and ousting the speaker for the first time ever, because he's kind of initiating the same thing. It's a mutiny. And what happens when authority has its knees kicked out from underneath it? And how do we find order from within that? So I found this movie to be welcome, even though going in, I just was like, why are we getting this? It's very capably performed. It's got a good cast. And for once, Kiefer Sutherland actually seemed like a different person to me. He kind of seemed like a stroke victim, like the way that he held his face. So yeah. It's a very interesting experience, and I appreciated its structure and its delivery, how trapped you feel in that room. And for a courtroom drama, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's interesting how over the years, different directors, whether it be on the stage or through film, have readapted the book to include the ship scenes, to not include the ship scenes, to make the courtroom part the main attraction, or just making it like part of the end, or what have you. And in this case, he is making the courtroom is the only thing. I mean, we get one little 5-minute scene at the very end that doesn't take place in the courtroom, but otherwise it's all that. And this movie is so expertly directed, and it's I can't overstate that, because we talk about Christopher Nolan earlier this year and Oppenheimer, and one thing that people kept saying with Oppenheimer was, Christopher Nolan is an expert filmmaker because he makes 3.5 hours of people talking in rooms really, really exciting, and really, but when you take that movie and compare it with this movie, this movie literally is, a hour and 50 minutes of people talking in a room. And it's so hard to make that exciting. It's so hard to make that tense. It's so hard to make people not get bored. And he did it so well. And I thought this was fantastic. It's a showcase for actors more than anything. It's not flashy at all. There is it is mostly medium and wide shots. I don't know if you noticed this, but the one close-up shot in the entire film is that shot right there when he's playing with the marbles in his hand. And then otherwise it's just medium length, far away shots, medium length, and it's not flashy at all, but it still is just expertly done from a filmmaker who knows what he's doing, and I loved it.
because that's the thing, when a master is just setting out to do something relatively simple, it's the best it's ever gonna be. Like film, this should be taught in film schools, you know, because just for like a rubric of like, hey, like if you can't do something this effectively or this well, this basic, then you shouldn't bother trying doing anything more complicated, anything more technical, because being able to just like make like you said, all these basic ass shots just arranged in, you know, like an order that just, you know, makes sense to the flow, and to have that flow be perfect throughout, it's like it's more than just walking a tightrope. It's like, what if a tightrope had like bends in it, you know, and like wobbles, and like it knows exactly where it needs to dip and rise as it goes through it. And the cast, I can't say enough about them. Even like the weird little bit parts, like the guy that just shows up to be an expert on like being a helmsman or whatever, like, you know, about piloting the ship, like what he would do in that situation. Like even that guy, even though it's dry, you'd think it would just like make your eyes and your ears just like, you know, kill you because you're subjecting them to it, but it gets you invested. It helps. It's actually delivered in a way so you understand what's being said and what the context of it is, because people actually act with their faces, you know, like it's simple things like that, and they emote when people talk. They're actually saying things. They're actually acting like people. Which, like, can you imagine if, like, Wes Anderson actually tried to make a feature-length play? You know, like, it would just be so, like, I don't know, is reductionist the right word? Where he just keeps on scaling out and back until it's not even the thing it's supposed to be. This is based. Like, Friedkin was so based up until death. And I thank him for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that he can sort of go out on a film like this, because it is just a reminder of how good he was. And performances you had mentioned, I want to shout out specifically, I don't know if I have his name here, but the like redheaded guy that they kept, that, you know, they basically played up as being dumb, you know, or like he didn't know what he was doing and he was like stupid. And you know, but it's funny because when you watch that scene, that's what you're thinking as the viewer. You're like, okay, this is the stupid guy. He's an idiot. He's like the lowest ranked out of all these people being interviewed. But when you look back on it, you know, that's the guy who's like the model sailor. Like that's the guy who, you know, he did everything that he was supposed to. He, you know, he has that line where he's like, the prosecutor lady asks him, like, you know, what were they saying on like the bridge? And he was like, excuse me? She's like, what was the conversation? They couldn't have just been doing nothing for 10 minutes. And he says, like, ma'am, as a person of my rank, I do not pay attention to the conversations that the officers are having. And so like, that's the guy that is the model sailor. And that's sort of how you think of it when you look back on it. Mm-hmm. But when in the moment, you're like, this guy's an idiot, you know?
Yeah. This isn't, because the whole, you know, question, you know, in this movie was, well, were they correct in taking their commanding officer, you know, out of, you know, the driver's seat? And under certain circumstances, yeah, you absolutely can. And under certain circumstances, you never want to have, you know, people under your command who would ever even consider it. You know, like exactly like that. Like they would much rather you don't pay attention to the weird, quirky things your you know, captain or your general does. You know, you just trust that their judgment calls are always going to be correct, no matter what. You know, they're infallible and unerring, and you know, that's how you wind up with, you know, god complexes like, you know, General George S. Patton. You know, like then. And that doesn't always work out for the best, because those people can be wrong. Even he ran out of gas, you know. And of course, that's kind of basically what they're saying here, is that this old guy ran out of gas to a degree and was just coasting along. And he was just waiting for a pebble to, you know, cause everything to derail, as it were. And what caused it to derail was those fucking infernal strawberries, which I had forgotten about that plot point, because in the original movie with Bogart, that's like a whole fucking thing you have to experience. And I guess what I appreciate about the Caine Mutiny, you know, court-martial version of this story versus the original book and the movie based on it, I like the objectivity that they have versus the subjectivity that's forced upon the audience by seeing all of the events on the boat before the court proceedings, because you've already made up your mind that, oh yeah, these dudes were absolutely right and the injustice would be them being court-martialed here when they did nothing wrong. And then in the final moments the movie still goes, "How aren't you an asshole for thinking that?" But in this, it gives you, there's a lot more nuance to this version of the story, and it works up until the end. Except, like, what is up with the end credit music? That funky ass beat that they had at the end. It was so upbeat.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like, because the movie ends, it cuts to black, and then the first thing that we see is in memory of Lance Reddick, and so I don't know if that was tied to it, like maybe that was like Lance Reddick's favorite song, or the type of music he liked, or I don't know, but and they just were looking to plug something in there. But yeah, it was pretty weird. And then you have that music at the end, and then also I'll shout out at the very beginning, you have that 80s ass font when the title comes up, and when it says Caine Mutiny Court-Martial, and it's like taking up the whole screen, and it's like yellow and just like complete 80s style, and that was cool too.
Because this is the kind of thing that would have been made in the 80s, and it would have been a big deal. Because
and it was.
It
was adapted in the 80s too, because that's the other one, the 1988 adaptation. So, which is interesting in and of itself, because you have you seen that one by chance?
I haven't. I've only seen the Bogart version.
That I haven't either. That's actually Robert Altman.
That's right. Yeah.
It's more similar to Friedkin's than the original. The one big difference, though, that is very interesting that I read about is that at the very end they have that same scene that this one does at the party, but Greenwald, as he's like deriding Kiefer, nobody else in the room is listening, and it's just between him and Kiefer, and it almost gives it the effect that it's not the victory that it is in this movie, where everyone's listening, and everybody's getting awkward, and everybody is like, oh man, this is awful. Nobody else is listening. Everybody else is just partying while he's having the conversation with Kiefer. So it's sort of interesting in that fact.
That was from an interesting era for Altman too. Like, that was when he was kind of blacklisted from major Hollywood films. This is post Popeye, and all he really could do was like go to like universities and make films out of stage productions. He did, like, that's where that Nixon movie he did with Philip Baker Hall, like this, I need to revisit that whole period. That Altman is just such a, we need to do a retrospective on that guy, but where the fuck do you begin? He made way too many movies.
Yeah.
And the same with Friedkin. You couldn't even begin to pick one out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they have similar careers where they both have kind of ups and downs and very long storied careers. But I do want it also, I mean, because this movie is mostly the performances, there are a couple other actors we should shout out. I think one of them is Kiefer, what's his name, Louis Pullman, who just is completely playing against who he was in Top Gun Maverick, Bob, or whatever. Yeah,
that's who he was. Okay.
Yeah, I loved his performance in this, because he's just the dirtbag in this. The guy who just wants to get his book, his stupid like Tom Clancy thriller type esque book written, and he's just a douche in this, and completely playing against type.
And that multitudes and multitudes. Like, that was the Fred McMurray character. Like that's who played him in the first movie that I saw. And he was like that. And the guy that played Merrick, he's mostly that dude. He's mostly just known for nothing, but he's like one of those guys to me.
Oh, Jake Lacey.
Yeah, he just pops up in things. And
he's mostly comedy. He was up until a couple of years ago. He was mostly just like a comedy guy, and then he did that horror movie with Micah Monroe, the like alien horror movie. That was
him. Oh, he was a blonde in that. Okay, now it makes sense why he was rattling in my brain so much. I want to. We should probably get her name, but the lady that played the prosecutor, she did a pretty capable job. You know, for even though it's thankless performing. You know, I don't know, as far as like compared to other characters, there's not as much meat to it, but it's very procedural lawyer talk for the most part. But she did good work. You know, like just expressing. You know, and reacting to things like the slow death when Queeg is immolating on the witness stand. that was pretty good.
Yeah, that scene is awesome. Yeah, he's just his big like monologue there, and oh man, I put it in our doc, a screen cap, but all you need is Lance Reddick's facial expressions, because during that entire scene you could just see the look on his face as, you know, Kiefer Sutherland was digging himself into the hole, and he was just sitting there just like,
maybe not that specific one, it's one of them.
Yeah, so good. And you know, shout out to one of the Duplass brothers. Jay Duplass shows up as the one of the expert witnesses. He was one of the doctors, you know, that examined Kiefer Sutherland's character, and he's the one who gets he's the one who gets like really grilled by Jason Clarke when he's like, you know, I resent he put words in my mouth or whatever. And
I didn't even recognize the guy. That's crazy. Okay, right on. So, and because there's no score credit, because there's no music in this movie, at least within the body of it, at the beginning and at the end. Otherwise, it's just the soundtrack of people talking and coughing. I guess it's not quite that bad. I'm exaggerating, but a throwback, little piece of media. This would have worked in a theater if we could have seen it in one, but its lineage is more so in the great assemblages of TV, you know, movies of yesteryear, which were just great excuses to get grade A talent together and just put on a show for the little people at home. So I'm grateful that Friedkin went out on this kind of a note, because it didn't exceed his grasp even at his age. It just kind of showed, like we've alluded to, just how fucking good the guy was.
Yeah, and kind of as we sort of get to the close here, why do you, I'm just curious, because I don't think Friedkin ever was on record as to why he did this movie. I mean, I don't think he knew that he was going to die. He wasn't sick. He didn't have long-term sickness. So, you know, it's interesting that he does this movie as his final film. And he had a point in his career when he did the 12 Angry Men remake, which this movie is very similar to. And so why do you think he sort of did this movie? Why is he revisiting periods of his career so like closely? Why do you think he chose this?
I think I kind of alluded to it in my intro, but I think he was really trying to say something about the here and now. You know, in the by recontextualizing this story into a modern context, not just on the military, but just on, you know, America and its institutions and its people. And if I'm gonna, you know, stake my flag anywhere, it's on that. Like that's what resonated with me, and that felt like the purpose behind it. Because like, how do you take a message from something so specific from, you know, 60, 70 years ago? Like, how can it still be relevant today? Well, it easily can, you know, as long as you frame everything up so that you can see how it all fits together. And for me, I could very easily see at least what made sense to me as far as what the statement was, using these old words. So yeah, I think it's just kind of an indictment of our situation, but the reality is you can't just chop down, you know, your old trees and, you know, cast them out, you know, without actually making sure that they're ready for it, and whether or not you're ready for it either. Like in North Dakota here, there's a lot of political movements from out of state. I'm spending a lot of money pushing us to have initiated measures to, you know, gut our institutional memory from our state government. And that's why I'm kind of sensitive to it, because it comes up a lot in like what's going on politically in my state, wanting to put term limits on, which on paper probably makes sense to a lot of people, but ultimately just hollow out your situation until you have nobody in there who's been there for any amount of time to actually know how to do anything. It's just a bunch of people climbing a ladder and then looking for the softest landing to jump out from once their time is up. And so I don't know, like this, like your first instinct is to side with the men in the Caine Mutiny and think that they did the right thing, and that Queeg is just washed up in a problem and was a danger to everybody. But I feel like there's just a strong argument to make that the real danger is casting out the people who really have wealth of knowledge and experience. So that's my soapbox. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's definitely, I think you're supposed to leave the film with a sort of conflicted feeling, like, who is really in the right. But I do agree for the most part that, yeah, it probably was the Jake Lacey's character who should have been court-martialed, because it did become, at a certain point, it really became more about Queeg on trial rather than Merrick on trial. And so yeah, I think that's kind of where it ended up. But yeah, great film, and very surprised that they kind of dropped this one just on Showtime. I don't know what the thought was. I don't know if they just didn't have any confidence in it or what, but yeah, go and watch it now. You can watch it now at home.
It's not for the boys, but it's for the men in your life. So give them a chance, and put it on as a change of pace. You had a very interesting mentionable this week. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah, so I don't know. Do you ever have that, like, you listen to music that you listened to like when you were a kid or when you were like a teen, and you don't listen to it for a really long time, and then one day it like comes up in your streaming, or it comes up on your playlist, and it's like all new to you again, sort of.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of what happened to me this week. Is I used to listen to this. So this is the Matrix Reloaded, the album, which was the double disc, back when they released CDs, the double disc of the soundtrack for the Matrix Reloaded and the score. And the soundtrack's okay. I mean, it's definitely a time capsule, but what you really want to listen to is the score in this, because this is done by Juno Reactor, which is a really crazy band, and then Don Davis, the composer Don Davis. And this soundtrack has, over the years, you know, it's gotten a lot of very, very good praise. Like the song that gets a lot of, you know, praise heaped on it is the song that plays during like the freeway chase. Do you remember that from?
Mm-hmm.
It's called oh god, why am I blanking on the name? It's I'll have to look it up, but
is it like
it's
Mona Lisa Overdrive or something?
Yeah, Mona Lisa Overdrive. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the song, and it's so good. It's like 10.5 minutes long, and it's just really, really great. Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I included it. It came up on my playlist when I was at the gym, and it was just like, wow, this is a great soundtrack or score, and I really, really love this. And this movie is, I mean, it's a whole nother question or a whole nother conversation, but I think The Matrix Reloaded is underrated in my opinion, and the soundtrack is kind of forgotten about at this point. But yeah, great stuff.
Thanks for the suggestion. I'm going to look it up, because yet again, that was a movie that I had to be given special dispensation to see without an adult in the theater. But it was awesome though. And that track in particular, it's named after a William Gibson like cyberpunk story, but fucking rules, you know. And that movie does rule. It's Revolutions that sucks. Let's be frank here, people. And I'll tell you what else sucks. You know, it's like, you ever work, you know, a really fucking long week, and you're dead at the end of it, and you come home, and the last thing you want to do is cook. The last thing you want to do is think about anything. So we were in that position. We went to Applebee's, and our local neighborhood Applebee's here in Minot. We beat the rush. We got there in time. We ordered drinks. We had an appetizer. Luca was sleeping. November was occupied. Everything was chill as fuck. And we were in a good mood. We were feeling good. And then like an hour passed and we realized, oh, we haven't gotten our food yet. The table of high school boys who showed up like a half an hour after we did have ordered their food and been fed and are already like getting their check. Yo, dog, where is our food? Oh man, I had a lot going on and I forgot to put it in. You know, so like it's in there. I promise you it's in there. I'll get it out to you as soon as I can. Half an hour passes. And it's like a disaster area, you know, like where we're sitting. The November's freaking out. Luca's freaking out. We are both like dying because like whatever we had to drink is worn off at that point. And, you know, we somehow were able to convince them very reasonably to comp our meal. So we didn't have to pay for anything. And they brought it out to us in to-go containers and we just left and went home. And I swear to God, that food had been sitting on that warmer for at least an hour. Like, if you ever had a fucking, like, I know it's fucking Applebee's, but have you ever had a burger from them, like, crunch in your mouth like it, like it had, you know what I mean?
Like it congealed and...
Yeah, like, I'm glad I didn't buy a steak. I'll just say that, because it just would have been destroyed. But yeah, so we got the DoorDash experience for free because we wasted 2 hours of our life sitting at an Applebee's. Don't do that. Don't support this company. I don't know why we did. We should have gone anywhere. We could have done anything. It would have been better than that. So that's my horror story. And let it be a lesson to all of you. Make better decisions with your weekend plans. This has been Theater and Stream. Watch your favorite horror movies and let us know. We can add them to the scare stream next week maybe. But if not, watch the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial. Palate cleanse a little bit, get some culture, and appreciate the final, entry that we have from one of the finest filmmakers who's ever lived. We will never stop singing his praises. But we will see you all next week. We're going to kind of hash out what we're going to talk about, and then we'll let you know. But take care, everyone, and thank you for watching.
Yeah. See ya.